Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Twitch stream here. My name is Ron Lundeen. I'm a developer here at Paizo.
And I'm Jason Tondro. I'm also a developer, normally working on Starfinder, on the Starfinder APs.
Right. I do the Pathfinder APs. I'm very, very excited to be announcing the new AP that we have. We've talked about it before, but I've got the first volume right here, which is Extinction Curse. The Extinction Curse adventure path kicks off with the Show Must Go On, the adventure by Jason Tondro, which is why he's here today to talk about this. Very excited about this kicking off. I think a lot of people have heard that this is our circus themed adventure path. There is more to it than that, of course, but the way that it kicks off is with a heavy circus look. In fact, when you start out, everybody's a member of the same circus. I do want to say right now, early on, that I want to give sort of a great big spoiler warning here. We're going to be talking about a lot of what goes into this adventure, what goes into the adventure path. So if you're a game master, we're going to give you a lot of good tips and tricks, reasons you might want to pick this up, why you might want to subject your players to this. If you're a player, maybe wait till your game masters run you through this and then call this up on YouTube to take a look.
Some of the writers, some of the freelancers were in the office just today. Of course, we were meeting with Andrew Mullen, who did some of the back matter articles for this.
Right.
And he was like, "This isn't the Circus AP. This is the Troglodyte AP."
That's right.
Yeah, because of course that's one of the big bad guys, big adversaries. So it's not all fun and circuses. It's also evil, cannibalistic lizard people.
That's correct. That's correct. One of the things that I wanted to make sure to balance all the way through here is that this adventure path both involves the circus in an interesting way. In a lot of adventures, you've got a home base that you range from. In this one, the home base moves with you. You sort of have to have it move. A circus has to pull up stakes and move from town to town in order to be successful. And there is also a nefarious plot by some pretty awful villains. The Zolgaths or Troglodytes that are enacting the titular Extinction Curse. But both of those things sort of play throughout the adventure path. And what I've done as a developer, what the authors have really helped me do is to strike a really good balance between the two. What that does is it lets a game master lean towards whichever they'd want one way or the other. You want to be much more heavy on the circus side. We've got the ability and the NPCs and the sort of the things that let you engage with that. You want to let the circus fade to the background so you can, kick down the doors of ancient ruins and hit Zolgaths in the face with a shovel. That's fine.
We'll get to that story.
We'll get to that story. But as far as the introduction, one of the things I wanted to do is let Jason talk about role in that.
Well, I wanted to rewind first and talk about how we pitched this idea in the first place. I was working as an editor at the time, and one of our policies in the editorial pool is to have one of the editors assigned to each new project, just to kind of act as a liaison between the creative team, the developers, the designers, the artists, and the editorial team. And I happened to be the editorial assignment to this AP. And how do we come up with this idea?
Well, we wanted to talk about how we get the adventure path started. We'd actually had sort of the Zolgath plot throughout.
Right.
That was initially the fact it was going to be set on and around the Isle of Kortos, which is important to us. But it was James Jacobs, our creative director, who said, we've kicked off an adventure, but we've never kicked off a whole adventure path by having the circus come to town. And you were the one, I think, in that room that said, wait, why are we having the circus come to town? Why not be part of the circus?
This is all my fault.
And it is all your fault. It is all your fault. And that was one of those moments that we have a delightful number of around here, where sort of everybody sits back in their chairs and goes, oh, that's a really good idea.
Well, so I mean, we didn't really know what was going to happen, and we talked about it a lot. And one of the things that we decided, an early decision about the AP is that you wanted to hire people that had never written a Pathfinder adventure path before.
Right.
And as we're walking out of the meeting, I'm like, I've never written a Pathfinder adventure path before.
I will say we also wanted to hire people who weren't internal because
That's right.
Because the Age of Ashes before this was written wholly by people who were inside the company.
Yeah.
It's like, let's get some people outside the company.
So
and you were like, despite that.
If you have ever wondered if it helps to be in the room where it happens, like that's totally like anyway. So we were throwing around the ideas and you asked if I could write. You offered an adventure to me, and you said, "What levels do you want to write?" And I wanted to do the second volume because level 5 is my perfect golden level, right? Like when wizards get Fireball, and like that's the perfect time to play these games for me. So I wanted to write the second volume so I could hit troglodytes in the head with a shovel. And I had this particular plot where I was going to have an actual magic shovel. It was going to be like a magic weapon that one of the gods had turned into a shovel, like in sort of Swords to Plowshares moment, right? Like, oh, you no longer have any enemies. Now you can just be peaceful and farm. So I'm turning your sword into a shovel. So there was going to be an actual level 5, like magic shovel of smiting that you would use to smack the Zolgath boss in the head with. And then you came to me about a week later.
Yep.
And you said, look, the person I originally had hired to write the first adventure can't do it in time. And I need to have it delivered on time because you have a very short development window.
Particularly on the first adventure.
That's right.
The first adventure more than any of them.
And of course, and you said this to me as we're literally in the middle of editing Pathfinder 2nd edition. Yeah. Like we're all working 12 weekends in a row to get this book done on time, and you're like, so what do you say? Can you write this Pathfinder adventure, right now? And I'm like, okay. so that was a very interesting 3-month period, but it did turn out really well. And
well, one of the ways it turned that I wanted to point out is in my when we were talking about the circus coming to town and we were talking about sort of the circus AP, I do have to admit that in my mind I wasn't thinking big top circus. In my mind, I was thinking like Dust Bowl traveling carnival.
That's because Carnival was a fantastic show and we loved it.
I actually watched the entire series in order to prepare for this. And Carnival was what was sort of going in my head as I was preparing the overall outline. Fortunately, what got communicated was not Carnival, but Circus.
Yes.
And you were the one that I think ran the most with that when I got the turnover.
So, and part of this is because if you remember, I came over to your desk and Eric had given you this beautiful book of vintage circus art.
Yep.
And I saw it on your desk and I was like, oh, and I would go to and I know we don't really have circuses like this anymore. Like the whole circus industry has transformed, right? So now when people think circus, they think of something like Cirque du Soleil or something like that, right? Which is a very kind of high class, kind of artsy entertainment. But when I was a kid, it was Barnum and Bailey's Circus with the popcorn in the stands and the bag of peanuts, and elephants that were probably terribly mistreated and all kinds of terrible things.
Which is why you don't see them today.
Which is why you don't see them today, exactly. But I had that kind of love for an idealized version of the circus. And before the outline was even done, I was thinking, what do I want to write? And those of you that scour my Twitter feed will find this post because I had an idea come to me. And the first part of this adventure that got written was the sideshow of everyday marvels. And I remember us in the meeting talking about the quote unquote freak show. A lot of circuses had this, and Carnival had this, but we wanted to avoid it. The sideshow is a real kind of problematic topic. It involves a lot of objectification of people and their unusual bodies. Now,
abusing and manipulating people. I do have to say, rather than be opposed to having the heroes circus have, people displayed for titillation because of their appearance, I expressly included this. We'll get to this with the next volume.
Yeah.
There's an evil circus, and in the evil circus, there is a sideshow that does just that.
Right,
so I want to say we're objectively saying it is a bad thing to do.
Yeah. And so I was thinking about that, and I came up with my version of the sideshow. So where everybody is like normal, like it's the bearded man and the dog-faced dog and the unjoined twins. And what's great about these people is not their bodies, but the stories that they have to tell. I'm going to flash back a minute to Watchmen, right? Do you remember?
Okay, yeah.
So those of you that have not watched the show yet, the HBO show Watchmen, it's way better than it ought to have been.
No spoilers. I haven't seen it yet.
It could have been terrible, but it's fantastic. But anyway, in the comic, there's this scene near the end of the book when John, Dr. Manhattan, is talking to Laurie. And he's like, you are the child of two people who had every reason to hate each other. But they fell in love and they had you, and you're kind of a miracle. And she says, well, that's stupid. I mean, if I'm a miracle, then every human being is a miracle. And he goes, yes, exactly.
Right.
That's exactly right. And that's what the sideshow of Everyday Marvels is about. So it's about these people who are physically just very ordinary, but they have these amazing stories that make them special. And of course, if it's true for them, it's true for all of us. Like, it's true for you, and it's true for you out there. And Hillary, you're watching. It's good. It's true for you too. So that's kind of what I wanted to get at with the sideshow.
Okay. I did want to talk, again, spoilers, about how this adventure kicks off, because that's an important part of both the hero's role in the adventure and your own family history.
Okay. So this is another Twitter hunt for any of you who care. Yes, the story of my great uncle Myron. So there's a dead body at the very beginning of this adventure, and Myron, the ringmaster.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And he's dead, and you have to figure out who killed him and how, and there's a whole story there. But
this is the story. We're actually telling the story.
This is the story about
the
my
ringmaster has been suddenly killed.
Yes.
And the heroes have to determine what happened.
A year ago, I was visiting family over Christmas, and I was doing some genealogical research, which is so much easier now in the online era than it used to be. And I was communicating with some other distant family members, and they had done a bunch of research and found newspaper articles that pertained to members of my family. And this is my great uncle Myron Tondro, who was just a name on a family tree, until we found all of these articles about him. My great uncle Myron fled the family and joined the circus. And then he came back from the circus, got a job at a general store so that he could rob it. Stole the contents of the cash register, a suit, and a revolver. If there is a better player character hook,
totally. Like, I get the armor, I get the weapon, I get the. All right,
like we know perfect. That some of you have played this guy. I'm pretty sure. And he steals a gun, a suit, and the contents of the register, and then he flees to his brother's house, another of my uncles, where the cops find him in the bathtub. And they arrest him in the bathtub. And he dies in jail from opium withdrawal.
Oh, my goodness.
I know. Uncle Myron's story, it gets dark. Ooh. Yeah, it's very dark. And that's why I put him, that's why he's the dead body at the beginning of this adventure, because it's true to form. It's just on brand for Uncle Myron.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
I do want to say I've seen some of the questions that are going by now. We don't have the player's guide out yet. The plan is to have that come out on Tuesday.
Yes.
So we are setting that out. It's going to have a lot of awesome backgrounds. One thing that you'll see in the player's guide is that all of the heroes have a connection to this circus.
Yes.
It's called the Circus of Wayward Wonders. Many of them are sort of refugees, I guess you might say, from the evil circus that has a part of the plot later on.
Yeah. And the rival circus shows up here.
Yes.
You do a circus off in the middle of the street.
That's right. And in fact, as far as some of the art in here is just fantastic. Let's just say some of the people in the other circus are not great. The clown, Jellicoe Bounce is sort of a wicked clown. One of the things that we do in preparing these adventures is we put together art briefs so that the artists that we commission know what it is to draw. For that one in particular, I put in the art brief, like, I need this to be vintage circus clown with the grease paint and everything. Many people are afraid of clowns. I would like a picture that scares them. This is an evil clown.
Yeah.
When you've joined the circus, there are already some people that are involved in it,
right? And
those are some of the circus acts. You created all these, and what we've done with the inside cover. Sometimes the inside cover is very interesting for what we choose to do with them. These are all posters both on the inside front and the inside back, that talk about the acts that are there. And so in this case, it starts with a lot of people in the circus, but 6 key acts that do their acts in the show. Many of them are suspects, I guess, because the ringmasters ended up murdered.
That's right.
Some of them have a much sort of longer role to play throughout the adventure path.
Yeah,
that's a lot of fun. And in fact, I'd asked everybody all the freelancers that wrote for this to give me 4 circus acts to sort of find along the way.
Yeah.
You were the only one that didn't have ones to be found along the way.
Right.
Because you had yours, they start out that way.
So the outline was very specific. Like, okay, at the very beginning of the adventure, the ringmaster is dead. The PCs have to take charge. Like, this is very important. We want to put the players in a position of authority with the circus right away, and they have to immediately make very important decisions because you've got a show. It's called The Show Must Go On.
Yep.
Like, the ringmaster's dead. The show's starting in 5 minutes. What do you do, right? And so there's this whole kind of puzzle, sort of social challenge, skill challenge thing going on where you have a bunch of acts, in this case 6, and potentially the players also have potential acts that they might have amongst the player characters.
Right.
What order do you want to put them on in? You have 3 rings. Sometimes you have all 3 rings filled with an act. Sometimes you have 1. Sometimes you have 2. You have a multi-staged kind of show that takes up multiple parts of the night.
Yep.
So how do you want to rearrange those acts and put them on in whatever order? And it became a great, very interesting. I love these non-combat challenges. And there's also like drunken people attending the circus, and there's snakes in the bleachers and all kinds of other ridiculous combat stuff for the people that just want to fight things. Okay, I'll give you stuff to fight. But really what it's about is this kind of problem solving at the beginning of the adventure. And a lot of social interaction and also detective work, like you say, because of course, some of the acts are suspects. The person with a giant snake that's their pet, and
this person seems to have been poisoned. Suspicion immediately falls upon the woman with the giant, Mistress Elijah with the giant snake.
And that figuring that all out and allowed me to do something which is totally second edition. I got to create the send in the clowns action. Right? Like, this is because where okay, whatever act we have currently going on is not performing well. They failed their skill check. We need a reroll. So we send in the clowns to distract the crowd and buy time, right?
Yep.
There's the ability to create a new kind of subsystem for the circus was so much fun.
And then trying to juggle the new subsystem being created and how it plays into how the different acts perform. One of the things that I want to point out is that the system we have, which is presented in here, requires that you have 7 different acts perform in the course of a circus, right? And it's it's the big number, the opener and the big number and all 3 and so on. But there's 7 of them that need to perform. And there are 6 acts that are given to you. So at least one PC has to go on. And it's okay if all the PCs go on, right? If every player's character is connected to the circus, and at least one of the player's characters, and maybe even all of them, have to have an act they perform in the circus.
But you don't have to be a performer if that doesn't fit the character concept you have.
Right.
You can be one of the roustabouts or one of the crew.
Yep. Yeah. Barker or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
Keep accounts. And also importantly, what you do in the circus isn't necessarily mandated by any class or ancestry choices you've made.
Yes.
You could be a druid that does whatever you want to do. You don't have to be the animal tamer just because you're a druid, right?
Yeah.
You don't have to lift heavy things just because you're the barbarian, right? Any feats of, athleticism, anything you're good at is something you'll be able to excel at. Building your own trick is sort of part of the trick being a circus parlance for circus acts. So building something that you want to do in the circus, what your role is for the circus, is an important part of making a character for this campaign.
And this reminds me of the art in here, because I know we've shown it a little bit already, but the unique art style of the circus, the nostalgic kind of golden age of circus art really allowed us to make this adventure path into something visually different than anything else you've seen before.
All of the iconics.
You were talking about the fact that it's more of a circus big top instead of a
roadside carnival.
Roadside carnival. And that was because I just couldn't resist all of the iconography of the circus. I mean, the big tent is such an easy set piece, right? Like everybody knows what happens at a circus, and you've got the rings and the animal acts, and there's the stands and the bleachers and the clowns and the
tightrope walkers, trapeze artists, and
exactly
high dive into a little tiny pool.
And because the players already recognize all those things, that means they can jump in right away and they can start manipulating with those tools and playing with those tools themselves. And whereas when I thought about a traditional carnival, I couldn't even imagine what kind of, like, where is it set? Like, what's the building? Like, you know, what, like,
what is it? Where's it in? What's it like?
What are the visuals of that? And I had a hard time thinking of that, and that's why I moved. That's why I did the circus.
There is a little bit of the thing that I liked about the expansion from a carnival to a circus is that anything that you can think of as impressing people in a carnival could also impress people in a circus, but maybe not vice versa. Right? If you've got a fire eater, you can picture a fire eater in the middle of the ring, you know, doing the thing in the circus.
And we have an evil fire eater in this one.
We do have an evil fire eater in this one as well. So it actually was an expansion of not only the idea of it, as you say, but sort of the possibilities that the characters can take.
I had a lot of fun with it. And then, gosh, what? Oh, and then of course, and that's just the first part.
That's right.
That's just the first part, because then, like, you got there's a whole mystery of what's going on in the town, and the players are recruited to sort of solve these mysteries. And then,
let me jump in. Let me interrupt just long enough to say that throughout this first adventure, the heroes are sort of a victim of their own competence all the way through. Right? The ringmaster's been murdered. Somebody's got to put on a show.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Well, God, heroes, you did a pretty good job. Okay, you could be in charge of our circus now.
Yeah.
We root out the murderer, and the local mayor is like, "Well, you found a murderer. That's useful. Hey, we've got these other things that you could stand to do." And then when you do one of them, one of the guys like, "Hey, you know, by the way,"
I felt sorry for the poor mayor, because I had to come, like, the name of the town is Aberton, right? So I decided that he's from the Aber family. So he's like the inheritor of the family name, and he's the mayor. But he's not really very good at it. And so he's just kind of like this sort of failure, and he needs the players to rescue him and to help him out with everything. And I got to design, and then that leads, there's all these sort of encounters all over town that the players can pursue in whatever order they want, and gather a bunch of clues and track down the bad guy, rescue some people, and so on. But eventually this all leads to the Aeon Tower.
Right.
The Aeon Tower. And this is where the troglodytes show, the Zolgath. As I was told, the troglodytes can call themselves troglodytes, but
they're Zolgaths.
We call them.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's
but
right.
we call
they're
them Zolgaths. And then I got to just write old-fashioned dungeon crawl, right? Which was super fun. And there's a monastery.
That's before then, but
the town clues lead to the monastery, and the monastery to the
Aeon Tower. One of the things that we were doing at the time, I was doing the initial sort of outlining of this, and Jason was doing the initial writing, is we were putting together the world book, the Lost Omens World Guide.
Yeah.
And so I was able to make sure the Aeon Towers being a thing, they were already a thing that we had established as being in there.
Okay.
They take a much more important role. What are they even?
Yeah.
Sort of in answer very thoroughly in the course of this adventure path. But I was able to sort of make sure in the 11th hour, I'm like, I need a map dot for a town called Aberton, right? This is where it is. Put it right here, because this is going to be important in my adventure path. And so we're able to get some last things in.
This relates to one of the great challenges of writing this AP that we both had. And I was terribly dependent on Ron for this, because, of course, I was writing this adventure before second edition was done. Like, you must have had to rewrite literally every single monster stat block in this adventure.
Rewrite is actually a little generous sounding. A lot of it was because the playtest rules had been out.
Yes.
And so a lot of it was just modification. How does the playtest rules update to second edition rules? And a lot of modification.
All the monster stat math is all different.
That's right.
And so we had to recalculate all. And I remember, like, I had to come up with treasure. I'm like, I don't know what treasure to assign because we literally have not written the treasure chapter yet.
That's correct.
And I was like, okay, well, so I would put in there, maybe there are some scrolls here, because like, you know, and you were like, just tell me, give me some advice on what might go there, and I'll place it all.
Right.
So Ron had to do a ton of the work to bring this adventure up to 2nd edition compatible.
Well, 2nd edition made it kind of easy for me in that the way in the beginning of the treasure chapter, or the end of the game mastering chapter, in the rulebook, it says, look, for this level, you should give out this many treasures of this level plus this much GP.
Right, yeah.
And so it was a matter of basically just checking the boxes, right? Oh, this is kind of what I want to do, and this is what I want to give out. Was able to do that all the way through. But you're right, it was occasionally me, you know, at my desk, leaning over to look at Luis Loza's desk, and nope, looks like he's still working on the treasure chapter over there. It's not done yet, but it was really good. What it allowed, I think, is a lot of the non-rules based story to really come through, right? I mean, things can go wrong at an isolated hermitage without you needing to be a specific rule mechanism for what happens with thus and so. You can have a cool middle of the old temple with rivers of fire, or rivers of water and river of wind, rules don't matter.
I love drawing that map.
So,
drawing that map was the best. Another interesting example of these challenges, because we were writing for a very new game.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it feels like an old game because Pathfinder's been around for 10 years, but 2nd edition was brand new.
Yeah.
And there were no dretches. Now that's so this is a very simple problem, right? I needed a level 1 demon. Like Zolgaths are demon worshippers.
Yep.
And I needed a bunch of demons in this adventure. And you gave me 2. You had 2 specific demons.
Right.
Which I think I even wrote up one or both of them.
Yeah. I don't know if you had one of the 2.
But we had those demons, but they're fairly not powerful in terms of overall scale. But for these characters, they were pretty tough. And I needed like cannon fodder demons. Right. I needed like minions, and there aren't any. I mean, I had quasits. Quasits are level 1, but you can't have an army of quasits.
That's true.
Like you can't have a pit full of quasits. Like that's totally out of character for quasits. So that's why we have all of these really unusual, demonic, tainted animals.
Right.
In this, like the Zolgaths and the monks, because they're monks of what deity?
Gozra. Hermits of Gozra.
And so you have all these sort of nature-oriented stuff and all these animals in there. And in the old days, in another game system, we would have put a fiendish template on them.
That's right.
And called it done. But P2 doesn't work that way. Like we don't even have ordinary earth elementals anymore. Like everything is unique.
Right. It is a sod hound. If it is level 3, it is a sod hound.
Exactly. And I love that, because it means that it makes all these creatures more interesting and unique. And more colorful and more exciting to fight, frankly. And so we had to come up with a bunch of new demonic-inspired animals that would have all been dretches in a previous version of this adventure. But the adventure is much better.
Well, and it tells a better story, because if you've got priests of Gozra who have decided, look, enough is enough with civilization, and we're willing to truck with evil in order to drive away what we feel is an anathema. And they've turned so far from their faith that they consider themselves Gozran, but any follower of Gozra would say, no, they're wrong. I mean, it showcases that perversion of, I guess, for them to summon dretches. But how much better does it showcase for them to have tainted animals with abyssal influence in order to pursue their twisted goals?
Much better. And this brings up one of the secondary plot elements for this campaign that we have not really gotten to, and that's the environmental issues in the campaign. Right. That there's this whole kind of environmental threat, environmental devastation, degradation issue going on.
Right.
The land around the Eon Towers. The land around the Eon Towers is slowly withering, and there's this old film. It's not that old, but it's a Steve Martin film where he plays like a fake preacher. He travels the countryside. I know. He travels the countryside holding these revivals, these outdoor revivals, and he's a con man. Someone else is probably remembering the film, and they're going to pull it up here for me. But it reminded me a little bit of that, because he goes to like this community in the middle of the Dust Bowl, sort of, and they're like, we need it to rain. Like that's what they want. Like if we don't get water, the crops will all die and all these farmers will starve. And we need it to rain. And that that is what the villagers are in this adventure.
Right,
They're just simple people, and they don't know why the environment is so messed up, but they presume that it's natural. Like this is, nature goes in cycles. It's a dry cycle. It'll come back, but it won't. Like they don't know this, but it won't.
It's just going to get worse.
It's just going to get worse, and that kind of desperation that the GM might know the truth, but the NPCs don't know, and it's quite tragic, actually.
Yep.
And the players are come into that, and anyway, it gave me something to sort of sink my teeth into narratively. Yep. Leap of Faith is finding the movie for me. Okay, thank you.
That becomes much more of a theme throughout. The Aeon Towers having been put there. There's only one Aeon Tower that features in this one. There's only one on the entire island that this starts on, but the heroes will end up with visiting several more. Yeah. The other ones throughout the adventure path, and they were established by Eridan, and why they were established. That's all part of the background. What's happened now that Eridan's dead is all part of the background of this. But the initial focus is sort of very personal, personal on not just the players, but it's personal for the people of the town, right? They really don't have anybody to turn to with this sort of hapless mayor and this hermitage outside of town, which used to be at best ambivalent, right? But is now sort of apparently actively hostile. I mean, they just don't have anybody to turn to. So it's sort of sad for them in the little microcosm.
Yeah. We have some questions.
What advice would you give to game masters when running this AP? Ooh, good. My number one piece of advice is to pay attention to how well, in the first couple of chapters of this, how well your players are responding to the actual being part of a circus versus the actual like going off and getting into fights, helping the people of the town, and then lean into that. There is several different pillars, I guess you could say, that this adventure path it supports this adventure path, and there are a lot of ways that you can lean into that. If you love the circus part, you'll be able to expand on that. If you love the, just ordinary people just trying to get along and needing some help, there are plenty of people like that, especially through the first 4 adventures. And if you like sort of kicking down the door and fighting monsters, there is no end of monsters to fight.
So there's a lot of NPCs in my adventure, but because of the structure, all of the adventures in this adventure path. Keep your ears open and your eyes out for what NPCs your players grab onto and find cool. Now, obviously, Ron and I have tried to make all of these NPCs as cool as we can make them, but your table's preferences are going to be unique to your table. So when you find out that people like, they really dig like what's the dwarven throwers?
That group of
where they form a dwarven ballista and they throw one of themselves across the room. If they really they love those guys, okay, then play the hell out of those guys. But if the players don't really get attached to particular characters, don't make a force issue out of it, because you're going to have a whole new slew of colorful NPCs in the next adventure
as they come along. And there's also places to help the GM do that. In the second adventure, there's a place where one of the members of the circus gets kidnapped. And we don't say which one it is. It's whichever one they like the most. Right?
That's a great answer. That's a great answer. If they like that
poor novice Axel.
Yes. He's the bird act, the trained bird act.
Yeah, the bird guy.
I love.
Again, a lot of this, as we're saying, is very spoilery for as we go along. We got a couple of options.
Yes.
Are there any cool player options in Extinction Curse? Yes. Very specifically, we have rules, which we'll talk about, sometime when we've got a little more time, about how you actually build a circus, sort of a circus subsystem in here. But the thing about players, in order to plug into that, is that they develop their own circus act, which is called a trick. Their own trick that they do, which is going to have certain trade. They can change their trick as they get as they learn more different options, as they learn more from people that they encounter throughout the adventure path. The way that you build your backgrounds is always important, I guess, for any campaign. We have a lot of backgrounds in the core rule book. In this one, there's a lot of the player's guide is going to have, I think, 9 background options.
Yes, I have to confess, I have read the player's guide. I looked at it this morning, so
Clown is one of them.
There's great, like there's all kinds of great background to allow you to kind of pigeonhole yourself, align yourself into all those classic circus roles.
Yep.
Yeah.
There is the acrobat background that's in the core rulebook. It gives you circus lore.
Yeah.
And a lot more of these give you circus lore. But many of the backgrounds, I don't know how many of the 9, maybe 5 or 6 of the 9, specifically talk about you left this other bad circus, and here's why.
The rival circus.
Right. The rival circus was no good. They mistreated animals and, used, evil magic, and we wanted out. So there is a natural sort of coalition of people who are like the refugees from that old circus. Like, we got out while the getting was good, that can come together. I think that's, even in the player's guide, one of the things that I really enjoy, one of the things that's going to be sad for me is to finally close the browser tabs that are all the circus lingo that I've been doing my best to put around.
Yes.
So you've got one of the background options is a butcher.
Yes.
But butcher not in the, a butcher is a circus term. It's not somebody that cuts up meat. It's the people that go up and down the stands selling stuff. The stuff usually being not very good food, or like, toys that are going to break before you even get them out to the car. Right? That's a butcher. And so you were a person that did that. You sold shoddy merchandise to people, on false dreams, and you're kind of sick of it. It's a reasonable background for somebody that has like a real hope of getting in. But blow in somebody that just decided to use the circus cover. I'm just
like my great Uncle Myron.
Was a blow-in.
He's a blow-in. Totally a blow-in.
So if you had to create a second adventure that shares a name with a legendary Queen song, what's the name of the adventure, and what would it be about? Maybe an undersea adventure called Under Pressure.
It's a kind of magic. It's just too easy, right? It writes itself.
All righty.
We talked about the player's guide already.
About the player's guide. Player's creation background, sneak peeks. Here's a good question.
Yes.
What sort of champion could you imagine existing in a circus, and what might they be doing? It's a great question. And let me back up a little bit, because in building Extinction Curse as the traveling circus adventure path.
Yes.
We created it sort of in unity with the adventure path that's going to follow after this, which is called Agents of Edgewatch.
Yes.
Where you're all cops, you're members of the law in the city of Absalom. And there are a couple of places where we intentionally keep the two apart. There are some fun places where we kind of put them together, but the two places we keep them apart is in the Agents of Edgewatch, you have a home base and you don't leave it. You're in the city of Absalom, and that's what the adventure takes place in the city of Absalom. You've got your home base and you don't leave it. Here, once your circus leaves a place, you're not coming back. You're travelers. That's what you do. So you're itinerant by nature. To answer the champion question, though, the heroes in the Agents of Edgewatch ought to be or lean toward lawful. And agents in this campaign, or people in this campaign, heroes here, probably ought to be or lean toward chaotic, right? If you're the sort of, buttoned up, settle down sort of person, circus isn't necessarily the place for you.
Yeah.
So I'd absolutely say Redeemer Liberator is the better kind of champion than Paladin. On top of that, there's plenty of opportunity to do good all along.
Yeah.
We've talked about how some of these townspeople are just down on their luck or don't know what they're going to do, and they're the kind of people that need heroes.
There's a really great opportunity here to make unusual character concepts, characters kind of out of the box. One of the words that you used early on was this sort of sense of whimsy for this adventure path. It's a little whimsical, and this is another good advice for the GMs out there. Like, if your players aren't into that, if they don't want to be whimsical, if they want to play it cold, hard, dead serious all the time, okay. But if they're willing to have a little fun, this is a great adventure path for that. And that can include your liberator, redeemer champion who's maybe following a chaotic deity and is championing good, but doing it in an unexpected, non-traditional way. Absolutely.
And one of the things that strikes me that is throughout here that allows you to lean into either type of campaign is that Zolgaths are well known for using dinosaurs. I mean, for goodness sakes, the fourth adventure is called Siege of the Dinosaurs, right? And there's dinosaurs even in this very one here.
Yeah.
And dinosaurs, being sort of classic animals, are great to either lean towards the whimsy, right? They are just sort of these kind of doofusy, out of place lizards that you can sort of trick or train or whatever you want. But if you're also playing at the dead serious side, I mean, you don't want to get on the wrong side of that, crushing foot or pounding tail.
The same Tyrannosaurus Rex that has the giant mouth also has the tiny little arms.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. They're both in one delightful package.
Yeah.
So that's fun. Good places to learn circus lingo. I don't have a specific website, but there's a lot of Google sites that just give you a lot of circus lingo.
I learned all of my circus lingo from old Marvel comics.
Uncle Myron? No.
No. He was dead before I was born. No, but there was a famous, so those of you that know me or know my history at all, I'm a huge comics nerd, and I actually taught superhero comics at the college level. But there's a deep-rooted connection between superhero comics and the circus. This is probably a tangent, but
all right. Go all academic, doctor.
All right. So if you look at Superman's costume, right, like the tights on the outside, the briefs, the body tights, the symbol on the chest, the cape. Now we look at it and we think a superhero. But in 1938, everybody that looked at that guy knew exactly what he was.
A circus performer.
He was a circus strongman. That's exactly what he was. Like that's the costume. That's the costume that they wore. And what happens in the very first issue of the Avengers? How did the Avengers get together? Because the Hulk is hiding out in a circus juggling elephants, and no one cares because he's in a circus, so everything is allowed. Like there's this, and Stan Lee had a deep love of the circus, and that connection between the circus and superheroes is really, really deep. So this is a long way of getting to the character of the Ringmaster and the Circus of Crime, which is a famous group of bad guys in Marvel Comics. The Ringmaster has this hat with a little stupid symbol on the front that hypnotizes you if you look at it, right?
Okay.
So, but he had a snake tamer lady, and he had a bunch of clowns, and the battle cry of the Circus of Crime was "Hey Rube." Right, which is, if those of you that have not followed, tell us what Hey Rube is.
That's Hey Rube is the call to a fight. Specifically, it is the call to a fight to call circus people to you because one of the townspeople is either acting up or needs to be taught a lesson or put down.
Exactly. Like and so the Ringmaster would shout, "Hey Rube," whenever Spider-Man shows up, right? And all the circus performers jump out and they all pile on Spider-Man.
In order to focus on Spider-Man.
Yeah.
I will warn you, when you go looking into some of the old circus lingo, there are ways in which we've avoided technical accuracy in favor of flavor.
Yes.
A ringmaster started out as specifically the person who was responsible for overseeing the horse acts. Oh. They're the master of the ring in which the horses ran. Yes. And that was it.
The name of the professor, one of the characters who's sort of a mentor figure to the PCs, that was the word used for the person who ran the sideshow.
Was the professor.
And he would usually be a retired former sideshow performer himself, who now just sort of was a narrator and a kind of, he would introduce the acts and sort of talk about the freakish bodies that were on display.
And fabulous stories.
Which we're not doing. We're not using that aspect of the carnival. We're using the sideshow instead. So
the same. Ringmaster now, if anybody talks about if somebody's a ringmaster of something, right, it means you're sort of in charge of the whole show, right?
It does.
So being in charge of the whole show is the sense in which Mistress Dusklight of the evil circus is she's the ringmaster and also runs the thing. We don't other than poor Myron, who's dead before the curtains even open.
Yes.
We don't specifically identify a ringmaster in the circus.
Correct.
I get a sense that that's going to be something that the player characters will figure out. The players will figure out which of their characters. On here? Oh no, it's in here. We've got Lenny dressed up.
Yeah, Lenny is dressed up as the
Lenny's
ringmaster.
dressed up as the ringmaster in here.
Yeah,
but that doesn't mean your druid has to be or your gnome has to be.
Somebody with good charisma will be.
Almost certainly.
This is obvious. This is a great bard adventure path. Like somebody play the bard.
And that's right. One of the things I think is fun about this, you talked earlier about all the problems that are going wrong while this first show must go on.
Yes.
Right. In building it, we knew that some of the characters are actually not going to be on hand for that, to take care of the drunks in the audience or to find the snakes,
snakes in the bleachers,
because they're actually performing right then, right? They're on. They can't be the ones who are throwing the magic missiles, etc., because they're doing their thing in the center ring. So, one of the questions, and this leads in one of the other questions, are the tricks developed by the PCs able to be used in combat, or are they part of the Circus subsystem? It's the Circus subsystem.
Yeah.
It's sort of like an exploration activity. It's built like an encounter activity, but it's sort of exploration or downtime mode.
It's kind of narratively, you'll come up with connections between your character's abilities and their tricks. So if you're playing a rogue who's really good at throwing knives, then you have a knife throwing trick that you might specialize in. But you don't need to use that when you are making regular dagger throw attacks.
Right, you make your regular dagger throw attacks.
Yeah.
But you can decide, in the course of my knife throwing act, do I emphasize my great aim, in which case I'll be making attack rolls? Do I emphasize how nimble I am? Oh, then I'm going to roll acrobatics.
Or do I do it while blindfolded?
That's right. That's right.
And just call it a perform check.
Right. Or, do I throw them up in the air and dodge them, and that's a reflex save?
Yeah,
You can do a lot of different things.
Yeah.
Any particular fun stuff in the Circus or otherwise for alchemists? Yes, there is fun stuff throughout. Nothing comes to mind for alchemists specifically, except that there is, in each one of these, including this one, we've started with Age of Ashes having what's called a toolbox at the end of the adventure. Toolbox, which is a bunch of extra rules.
Yes.
And the extra rules primarily are to serve the adventure path in some way. Items that you can find if you're in the adventure path. That includes all the new monsters, the bestiary that's normally in the back. This first one has a couple of archetypes that you can take, the juggler and the staff acrobat, things like that. So they're a lot of fun. There's some new weapons.
So one of the things, let me address the alchemist issue real quickly, because as I was writing this, there's 2 other level 1 adventures for P2.
Right.
There is Fall of Plaguestone, which has an alchemist and goblin in it prominently. And then there's the first adventure in
Age of
Ashes, Hell Knight Hill, which has an alchemist and goblins in it.
Yep.
So in other words, we already had 2 adventures for this level that were specifically focusing on the differences in P2.
Yep.
On the new class,
alchemist
and goblins were forefront. And so I intentionally did not do that for this adventure because I didn't want it to feel like, it's another alchemy goblin adventure. Level, are they all the same? So that's why, but that doesn't mean you can't play an alchemist. Right. You're an alchemist in a circus. Those 2 things obviously go together.
Fumbus is one of the iconics that we have.
There you go. There you go.
Yep. Any thoughts about transitioning players finishing Plaguestone into this AP?
Oh, interesting.
I don't know what level you are when you end Plaguestone.
You are 4th.
4th level when you end Plaguestone.
Yeah, so it fills this niche.
Right.
You'd start with the second adventure. You'd skip this.
Which I suppose you could do in that this one assumes you are getting the legs underneath you to establish the Circus of Wayward Wonders.
Yeah.
You've had a lot of successes, and at the end of this one, you realize, look, once we're done with this little town, the only place left to go to is the town of Escadar.
I'll tell you what I would do. I would roll the circus into Plaguestone.
Oh, that's a good idea.
The circus rolls into Plaguestone, you're done, you don't have anything, and so you join the circus or you become affiliated with the circus that way.
Yep.
It would require a little bit of buy-in. But the beginning of this adventure path assumes the players are already part of the circus. We don't. We don't spend any time figuring out how do you join the circus. So you'd have to do that. But yeah, I would have the circus come to Plaguestone, and then then they just keep on moving.
Yep.
And take you with.
I like that. The information on the new weapons. Can we get any more information on those? Sure, I'll show you. Heck, this is all spoiler filled. I'll just literally show them to you. We have a lot of sort of silly weapons, frankly. We've got bladed hoops, the bladed Diablos, which is basically like a combat yo-yo, jester clubs, throwing knives, fire poi, where you light them and swing them around.
Yep.
So we got a page of new weapons. That's fun stuff. I do ought to say, when it comes to putting stuff like this in here, comes to putting in things like the weapons, the new spells, new items, a ton of which are in here. You mentioned earlier that when we got this meeting together, we established sort of the art liaison, the editing liaison.
Yes.
All these also have a design team liaison. And so we make sure that all the new rules get sort of put to them.
Mark?
Yes, it is Mark for this. It started out with Stephen.
Yeah,
and he actually,
I remember. He was in
yep,
the meeting. Yes.
Yep. In fact, he was the one that actually pointed out, because he's got a deep circus lore himself,
good.
right?
Yeah.
And he's the one that pointed out that you don't have to get too far into circus lore before you're doing an awful lot with freak shows. So you're going to step back from that. Keep in mind.
Yeah.
But he was the one that took a look through this. Mark's taken over and has done sort of admirably on the rest of that stuff. And even to the point where I will tell you where I'm at. I finished up the development. I'm just finishing up the development on the 6th one of these, the very last one, the Apocalypse Prophet.
So you will almost, it is almost time to close that window full of circus
Close
lore.
the window of circus terms. That's right. I will tell you the favorite circus term that I picked up going through this is a stake bite. Not a snake bite, a stake bite.
What is a stake bite?
In the circus, you have to take down and put back up the big top over and over and over again.
A lot
if
of times,
you don't use new stakes to pin down the big top, the tarp, all the guidelines that go out, if you use the same ones over and over, they'll end up getting malleted flat on the top, and they'll split, and they'll be sharp, like razor sharp around the edges. So if you're walking around a circus at night,
you will get on the foot.
You will get hit right across the ankle. That is a stake bite.
It's like stepping on a die 4.
Yeah, yeah, maybe not that bad. But it's also generally a term applied to novices, right? You don't know any better than to, we got a rundown show here, and you don't know any better to keep careful.
They're noobs.
You got a stake bite.
You're a stake bite. Yep. That's great. I love it. Are there any new animal companions in any of the adventures? Okay, so I just want to note that we put a couple of animals in here,
right?
Specifically in case the PCs wanted to take them as animal companions. There's a bear. There's what else?
Oh, there's one of the wolves.
The magical, like the wolves that have been magically altered by the monks. Right.
Yeah, there's one that's in the process of being magically altered.
That's right.
And if you stop that before before the wolf gets a full abyssal influence, and you're like, oh, come here, puppy. No, you're like...
And there's a trained bear. And the trained bear's master died, but they're still carrying the bear along in his own wagon.
Bear gets pretty mad. I happened to see the art for the bear getting angry and lunging out at Harsk. That's very. And he said the bear has a little hat on still.
I couldn't resist. I mean, it's a circus. You have to have the trained bear.
Let's see. Any feats to support a battle clown fighting style? Every feat supports a battle clown.
I mean, that's exactly why I made Jellicoe Bounce to be. Like there is a battle clown. He's got high mobility and movement. So and he's throwing knives and
that's right.
And I think there's also like originally we were going to call this a carny golem, but we changed the name of it. But like the automated circus person.
Yeah, that's there's one of them that accompanies.
We couldn't call it a carny golem because golems have all these rules, and we didn't want the golems.
That's right. And so we have. What do we ended up calling it? The mechanical carny.
The mechanical carny.
The mechanical carny, and you'll notice on the facing page we've got tons of new Zolgaths throughout.
Mullen wrote new Zolgaths for every adventure in the path.
Yep. And they are, if you've got, if you're aware of our lore, you know that Zolgaths are now sort of, brutal and barbaric, and so some of the ones you come up with initially are brutal and barbaric, but they come from this long line of psychically powerful.
Yeah.
Progenitors, and some of those are who you come across with in later adventures. So they sort of scale with the players. There's always a kind of Zolgath that is the right kind to be the enemy throughout the adventure.
And just a brief note, someone was asking about things that are new for this adventure path. There's a bunch of new ranger stuff, new snares.
Yep.
I know because like the Zolgaths have like some ranger.
That's setting snares.
Ranger-like class snares, stuff. Yep. And so we did try to get to some of those new things in P2 that there weren't in P1.
Right. That and snares, I guess technically snares are good for anybody, not just rangers.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anybody can
absolutely.
Yeah. Speaking of animals, anything for wild shapes such as expanded forms or more form feats or spells? I don't know is the short answer.
Not in this.
Not in this. The longer answer is I have not yet taken a look to see where the gaps are, because the form spells that exist in the core rulebook I've seen, the aerial form and pest form and dinosaur form. I mean, what? Dinosaur form is sort of a natural fit. I mean, I didn't have to write that when it was already in the book. I mean, it covers an awful lot of ground. I'm sure there are plenty of places where there's some design space to come up with more stuff.
A shapeshifter could do some really great circus tricks if they didn't let the audience know that they could change shape.
Or even if they did and they did so spectacularly. It depends on what sort of NPCs you come across in the later.
The person goes inside the cabinet and the cabinet opens up and the cat runs out. And you're like, where did the magician
Where'd the person go?
Where'd the person go?
There was when I was much younger, I went to Russia and I got to see a performance of the Russian circus. The Moscow Circus, right?
That's fantastic.
And one of the things that stuck with me, there were tons of spectacular performances, but along those lines, part of the clown act in between when they were setting something up was chasing, I think it was like a little rabbit or something kind of around that learned to run around on the little ring, and it goes into like a little, and the clowns are like, ooh, chasing a little rabbit around. It goes in the ring, and then when it comes out the other side of this little short, a porcupine comes out.
Oh, that's great.
And because it comes out, all of its quills are as it comes out, and all the clowns are like, whoa! I mean, it's obviously the porcupine was just in there, and it knows when the rabbit comes in the back, I go out in front.
Yeah.
But it was a delight at the time. So
we were so easily amused when we were children.
Oh yeah. Oh goodness, yes. All righty. Is there a class you think it would be a good pick for the campaign, which would initially think would fit into a circus?
So you don't think it would be a good circus fit, but it actually is.
It actually is. I guess. What do you think? I got some ideas.
Well, I mean, I'm just thinking of the obvious ones, right? Like wizards and illusionists, all that stuff. That's all easy. Bards, super easy. Often fighters, all the strong characters are easy because they can be doing feats of physical rogue is easy.
Yeah. My thinking was monk. Because you're like, this is somebody who is lawful and disciplined.
A great pick.
But any circus performer needs to be exceptionally disciplined physically disciplined in order to be able to get.
There's also a unique possibility of tying into the monastery of Gozra here. Like you could be like a monk of Gozra who's separated from the monastery, and you don't know what they've been up to. Like you haven't talked to them in a few months. Yeah. Right. And
things went bad. They were leaning down a philosophical road. You knew where that was going, and it was not going to be a good one. Yeah,
and maybe you've only been with the circus for a little while, but that would give you a connection to the rest of the adventure that the other characters don't have. And maybe the champion is another good example, and we talked about that a little bit earlier on. But it's not an immediate. You don't immediately think, oh, how does my paladin fit in with this adventure? Well, maybe the paladin doesn't, but a champion does.
Yep. This question for you.
Uh-oh. Which one?
The first one there.
Is it awesome to finally have your first? It is. All right. So I've been able to write a lot of adventures. It's for Paizo over the last couple of years, and being able to write one. It really is a great privilege and an honor to write for a big game like this. Like, it's fun to write. It's wonderful to work on. But the real joy is seeing people play it. Like going out and listening to all of you tell your stories about, and a lot of you are like blogging. You're like, I can't wait to live stream this. Okay, I'm going to listen to every single one of these. Like if you stream this adventure, link it on my Twitter, and I will watch that thing like 24 hours a day. Because just shoot me up, right? Like that's the real joy is watching people take, and you're going to change it. You're going to change the whole thing. You're going to throw out huge chunks. And my favorite part, whatever my part is, you're going to throw out and put it in something else to fit your table. And that's great. Do that. That's exactly what you should do.
It's going to be even more awesome.
Yes,
everybody's going to be loving it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So that's the best joy.
Reading the preview of each book of this adventure path, how prevalent does the circus remain? Does it become more of a background or home base in favor of a more prehistoric theme? That's an excellent question. The putting on a show is critical for the first scene of this first adventure.
Yes.
But putting on a successful circus show is important in every one of the adventures except the fifth one, I want to say.
Okay.
The fifth one, the heroes have to leave the circus behind. It's the first time in 4 adventures they do so.
Yeah, that's the bridge adventure.
Yeah, it is. That's the one where the crew becomes an away team and they have to do their thing before they come back.
Yeah.
But even in the third one, putting on multiple successful circus performances is pretty important. The fourth one definitely, and then even in the beginning of the sixth one, putting on a successful circus performance is critical. It becomes. Let me say, if you want it to be important, it remains important throughout the entire adventure path.
One thing though that you will notice, and that I heard from other writers that were working on this, because I think Liz Liddell wrote the sixth one. She wrote the last.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
That the nature of the circus changes as the characters get very powerful, because the circus act that an 18th level character can do is a whole different thing than the circus act that a second level character can do, right?
But the expectations on an 18th level. I mean, if I'm sitting in that circus and there's a first level character who's doing something, maybe I don't expect a whole lot.
Yeah.
But if I know full well that, oh, these are the adventures that have been done X and they've done Y and they've done Z, wow me.
Yeah.
I expect to be wowed.
Yeah. You can juggle knives when you're second level, but you got to be juggling lava when you're
exactly
18th
right.
level.
That's exactly right. Yep. All righty. So I think we get a couple more of these, but I think we're looking towards wrapping this up. Is there a circus trope you didn't get to squeeze into the adventure but wished you had? I think, this is going back to Carnival.
Yes.
But one of the things that I feel like having the very nature of our storytelling, where it's a group of adventurers and we don't want to direct what they do, means that like the grand circus romances was not something I felt like we were able to do.
Well, see, so this is a great thing. You have to let the players pick the romances.
That's exactly right.
This is what I was actually kind of getting at this. This was what was in my head when I was talking about looking to see which NPCs the players latch onto. And if they decide, oh, Axel, he's so dreamy, like, okay, like there's your romance, right? But if the players choose, if they're not interested in that, you can't force it. You can't force it. We didn't get to do a fortune teller, right? Like the circus sort of.
That's true. That's
fortune teller character, but there just wasn't room. The sideshow of Everyday Marvels originally had the 160-pound woman, right? Which is instead of the 600-pound. Like, let's talk about a normal. Like 160 pounds is pretty normal, right? Like, but that got cut, and you replaced that with the tattooed woman instead.
Correct.
I will note that I actually had a tattooed woman in my original draft, which I cut because I only had room for 4. But yours was very different than mine, because your tattooed woman is covered in tattoos, which is pretty normal for today. Like lots of people have tattoos. My tattooed woman had one tattoo, but 100 different stories for what it meant.
To go with the one tattoo.
So the one tattoo was like this enigmatic symbol, like just this abstract thing. And it's like, what is it? Well, it's like the birthmark of an ancient dynasty, or it's the holy symbol for a deity that everyone's forgotten.
Depends on the day.
There's 100 different stories, right? So there things always end up on the cutting room floor. But the adventure is better, 100% better than it was when I turned it over.
And it's even better when played.
Better when played. So
do that. So I think we'll go ahead and wrap that up now.
Is there a god of circuses? No, but there should be.
Kurgas maybe is the closest. Kurgas the strong man.
We should have had
the god of circuses.
Yeah. The answer to this is your character.
Yeah,
at the end of it's the god of circuses.
Excellent. I guess in a very indirect way, Eridan is sort of the god that's most important to this adventure path, although certainly not a god of circuses.
That would be a great act. Like somebody should, I am the god of circuses. And that's
somebody make that so. Alrighty. Well, thank you very much, everybody. Again, we're very excited about the Extinction Curse's kickoff with The Show Must Go On. I'm Ron Lundeen, developer.
And I'm Jason Tondro. My Twitter handle is right there. Show me all of your live streams of this adventure so I can watch all of them.
Thanks so much.